It was just another ordinary evening on a crowded city street. The sun was sinking behind half-finished buildings, painting the sky with a dull orange haze. The traffic lights blinked lazily and street vendors were shouting for customers. People moved fast, office workers, students, rickshaw pullers, everyone trying to get home before the chaos of night. But in the middle of all this rush stood a girl. She wasn't doing anything wrong, just waiting quietly near a tea stall, her eyes lowered, holding a small bag close to her chest. She looked simple, maybe too simple. A plain white cotton salwar, hair tied in a low braid, and a shy face that didn't invite conversation. The kind of girl who could disappear into a crowd and no one would even notice. But someone noticed her that evening. 3 boys sitting on parked bikes across the road had been watching her for a while. They were regular faces in that area, street-smart, loud, and reckless. People knew better than to argue with them. They called themselves the New Road Kings, though in truth, they were just troublemakers who liked to pretend they ruled the street. Rafi, the leader, was the loudest of them all. His friends, Imran and Sohag, laughed at every word he said, no matter how cheap or cruel, and today his target was that quiet girl standing near the tea stall. Deco, Madam Kitna serious ban ki kari hai, Rafi said, smirking. Maybe she's waiting for her secret boyfriend. Imran whistled, or maybe she's too scared to talk, let's help her out. Their laughter echoed between the shops. A few people glanced but quickly looked away. Everyone knew how these boys were and no one wanted trouble. The girl didn't react at first. She just stood still, her fingers tightening slightly around the strap of her bag. Her eyes flickered toward them for a moment, calm, unreadable, and then turned away. That small act of silence made Rafi angrier. "Urai, she thinks she's too good for us," he barked. "Come on boys, let's see what happens if we talk to her." Before anyone could stop him, he kicked his bike into motion and rolled slowly toward the girl. The other 2 followed, laughing. The tea seller, an old man with a white beard, murmured softly, "Leave her alone, Rafi, don't do this." But Rafi just grinned. "Uncle, we're just talking, you think we're criminals or what?" The girl took one small step back, her eyes lowering again, but her voice, when it came, was steady. "Please move your bikes, you're blocking the path." Her tone wasn't scared, it was polite, firm. Rafi tilted his head. "Oh ho, so she can talk, very nice, but we're not blocking anyone's path, are we?" He looked around mockingly, spreading his arms as if the whole street was his. Imran laughed again, pulling out his phone to record. "Hey Rafi, maybe we'll make her famous on TikTok." The old tea seller tried again. "Enough boys, she's just a girl." Rafi turned sharply. "Uncle, shut your mouth before I throw your kettle in the drain." The girl looked up at that moment. Her eyes, dark and steady, met Rafi's. For the first time he hesitated. Something in her gaze made him uncomfortable, but his ego wouldn't let him stop. "You think you're brave," he mocked. "Why don't you show us that confidence again, smile for the camera." He reached his hand forward, but before he could touch her, the girl's hand moved faster than anyone expected. She grabbed his wrist, twisted it sharply, and in one swift motion forced his arm behind his back. Rafi yelped in pain, his phone dropped to the ground. Imran and Sohag froze, the entire street fell silent. No one had seen it coming. The simple, quiet girl who seemed afraid a moment ago was now standing firm, her face cold, her grip unshakable. "Let go of me," Rafi shouted, struggling. "Move another inch," she said calmly, "and you'll be on the ground before you can blink." The way she said it, not as a threat but as a fact, sent a chill through everyone nearby. Rafi's friends started shouting, "Hey, who do you think you are, let him go." But she didn't even look at them. With her free hand, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small black wallet. It flipped open, revealing a badge. A silver police badge. The crowd gasped. "I'm Sub-Inspector Rinny Does," she said firmly, "Civil Police, and you 3 have just made the biggest mistake of your lives." For a moment, no one moved, even the traffic seemed to stop. Rafi's face went pale, the arrogance in his eyes vanished, replaced by pure panic. "See, Civil Police," he stammered, "you're joking, right?" She tightened her grip just enough to make him wince. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Sohag dropped his phone instantly. "Baji, we didn't know, we swear we were just joking." But she ignored him. "Joking," she repeated. "You call harassing women a joke?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried power. the kind that silenced a crowd. The old tea seller smiled faintly under his breath. "I told you boys to stop," he murmured. By now, people had gathered around, curious eyes, whispering voices. Someone even began recording. The three boys were sweating, their earlier confidence completely gone. Rinny finally released Raffi's hand and stepped back. He stumbled, clutching his wrist. "I could arrest you right now," she said. "Eve, teasing is a criminal offense, but I want to see if you're smart enough to walk away or stupid enough to test me again." For a moment, it seemed they might try to run, but before they could move, two men in plain clothes appeared from the other side of the street. They walked calmly but with authority. Rinny nodded slightly when she saw them. The boys froze. "Wait there with you," Imran stuttered. Rinny nodded again. "Yes, you've been under watch for weeks. Chain snatching, harassment, extortion. You thought no one noticed. I was sent here because of you." The street erupted in shocked murmurs. Raffi's mouth opened but no sound came out. His face twisted between disbelief and terror. The plainclothes officers moved in quickly, handcuffing Imran and Sohag. Raffi tried to step back, but Rinny caught him again, this time with no mercy. "You wanted to touch me," she said softly. "Now you'll know what it feels like to be touched by the law." She pushed him toward the officers, who grabbed him firmly. As they began leading the three away, Raffi suddenly shouted, "This isn't fair, you tricked us." Rinny turned once, her voice calm but sharp. "Justice doesn't need to be fair, it needs to be done." The crowd applauded as the boys were taken away. Some clapped quietly, others whispered to each other, relief, respect, and astonishment mixed in the air. The old tea seller smiled with pride. Finally, someone taught them a lesson. Rinny looked around once more, making sure everyone saw what had happened. "Next time you see something wrong," she said quietly, "don't just look away." The crowd dispersed slowly. The street returned to its usual chaos, but the energy had changed. Everyone knew they had witnessed something they wouldn't forget. Rinny stood alone for a moment, her expression unreadable. She took a deep breath, then turned to leave. But before she could, a small boy approached, maybe 10 years old, holding a cup of tea. "Diddy," he said shyly, "you were really brave." Rinny smiled faintly, kneeling to his level. "Brave isn't when you're not scared," she said softly. "Brave is when you do what's right even when you are." The boy grinned and ran off. As she watched him go, her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket and answered. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. A serious voice came through. "Good job, Officer Does, but there's something you need to know. One of those boys isn't just a street punk. He's connected to someone higher, very higher. We're sending you his file. Don't go home tonight." Rinny's smile vanished. Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Understood, sir." She ended the call and looked back toward the direction where Raffi had been taken. Something about the way he'd shouted earlier replayed in her mind, not anger, but something like fear. She knew this wasn't over. As she started walking toward her bike, she noticed a black car parked near the corner of the street. Tinted windows, engine off, it hadn't been there earlier. For a moment she stood still. The reflection of the orange streetlight glimmered on the car's glass. Then, as if on cue, the car engine started slow and smooth. The headlights came on. Rinny's heartbeat quickened. She didn't move. The car didn't either. They just stared at each other across the street, human and machine, like a silent warning. Then the car slowly rolled away, disappearing into the night. She exhaled, pulling her jacket tighter. She didn't know who was inside that car, but she knew one thing: this was just the beginning. The city lights flickered. The air felt heavier than before. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, faint but growing louder. Rinny climbed onto her bike and rode off toward the station. Her simple disguise had done its job, but she could feel it. She'd stepped into something far bigger than a few street bullies. And somewhere behind the walls of the police headquarters, a file with her name and Raffi's photo was being opened. Inside that file, a single line was highlighted in red ink. "Suspect linked to internal affairs leak. Possible connection to Inspector Does murder case." The name Inspector Does made Rinny freeze when she saw it later that night, because that wasn't just any name, that was her father. The man who had been killed 5 years ago in what was called an accident. But now the puzzle pieces were shifting. Rinny looked at the photo of Raffi on her desk, the same arrogant boy who'd tried to tease her hours ago. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from realization. Maybe fate had brought her there for a reason. The rain started tapping against the glass window. She stared outside, her eyes burning with quiet determination. She whispered to herself, "You thought you were teasing a simple girl, but you just woke up a storm you can't control." The city slept, but inside that small police office, Rinny sat in the dim light, going through the file page by page. Every word she read connected to another unanswered question from her past. Her father's last case, the cover-up, the missing evidence, the same gang name mentioned again and again, and now the son of one of those men, Raffi. She realized the truth in a cold instant. This wasn't random, this was a setup. And if Raffi was connected, then she was closer to her father's killers than ever before. But she didn't yet know someone else had already started watching her. The black car that followed her earlier had parked outside her building. Inside it, a man in a dark coat spoke quietly into a phone. "She took the bait," he said. "The girl's smarter than expected, but we'll handle her." A pause, then the voice on the other end replied, calm and deep, "No, don't touch her yet, let her dig. The more she finds, the easier it'll be to bury her." The call ended, the man smiled faintly as the rain poured harder. Inside her room, Rinny closed the file and stared at the badge in her hand, the symbol of justice she'd sworn to protect. Her whisper was barely audible. "If justice killed my father, then maybe it's time I changed what justice means." The thunder cracked outside, and for the first time her calm face broke into something else, a spark of fury. This was no longer about three boys on the street. It was about something deeper. Something buried in the heart of the police force itself. And as lightning flashed across the night sky, one thing became clear: Rinny had just started a war she didn't even know existed. The night dragged on, heavy with rain and silence. Rinny sat at her desk, the flicker of a single fluorescent light tracing sharp shadows across her face. The open file lay in front of her, soaked in truth and lies. Her father's name, her badge number, and Raffi's blurred mugshot, all tangled in one dark thread that refused to unravel. Her phone buzzed again, a message: "You're being watched." No name, no number, just those three words. Rinny's jaw clenched. She scanned the window, her reflection starring back through streaks of rain. She reached for her weapon, not out of fear but instinct. The city outside was a jungle and predators moved quietly. She grabbed her coat and left the station. The corridor was empty except for the echo of her boots. But as she turned the corner toward the exit, she noticed a door slightly ajar, the records room. The light inside flickered weakly. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Inside, rows of dusty files stretched from floor to ceiling. The air smelled of old paper and secrets, but what caught her attention was a shadow, a movement near the back shelf. "Who's there?" she called out. No answer. Her hand went to her gun. "Come out slowly." Silence. Then a faint click, not of a gun but a phone camera. Someone was recording her. She rushed forward, kicking over a chair, but whoever it was had already slipped through the side exit. She ran out into the alley behind the building, her boots splashing through puddles, but the figure had vanished into the dark. Only the faint sound of a motorbike echoed down the road. She exhaled sharply. Whoever that was knew what she was doing, and they didn't want her to find what she was looking for. The next morning came gray and tired. The city moved as if nothing had happened. Vendors opened their shops, school buses honked, but in Rinny's mind everything had changed. She walked into the interrogation room where Raffi sat, the same boy who had mocked her on the street. His swagger was gone. His eyes darted nervously around the room. She pulled out a chair opposite him and sat down. "So Raffi," she began softly, "you've been busy." He didn't respond. His wrists were cuffed, his leg bouncing nervously. "I went through your record," she continued. "Chain snatching, blackmail, drug dealing, impressive list for someone your age." Still no response. She leaned forward. "But what interests me isn't what you did, it's who protects you." His eyes flickered just for a second, but that second told her everything. She smiled faintly. "You don't have to speak, your face already did." He looked away, muttering, "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Then tell me," she said, "enlighten me." He shook his head. You think you're brave because you caught us, you have no idea what's coming. The people you're trying to expose, they're not street boys, they're inside your own department. Rinny's heartbeat slowed. Every word he said confirmed what she already suspected. Inside the department, she asked quietly. Raffi grinned faintly, maybe even above it. Before she could question further, the door opened. A senior officer walked in, tall, composed, his uniform spotless. Enough, Sub-Inspector Does, he said sternly. I'll take it from here. She turned to face him. Sir, with respect, this suspect might be connected to the Does case. I need to. He cut her off. You're overstepping your boundaries. Go file your report and leave the investigation to the higher-ups. Rinny stood slowly. Yes, sir. But inside her blood burned. As she stepped out of the interrogation room, she glanced back through the glass window. The senior officer leaned down, whispering something to Raffi. The boy nodded quickly. Then the officer smiled faintly and turned off the camera. Her fists tightened. Later that evening, she received a suspension order for procedural violation and misconduct during undercover operation. It was clean, too clean, the paperwork, the signatures, all perfectly done as if prepared in advance. She stared at the letter for a long time, her pulse heavy in her throat. Then she packed her bag, returned her weapon, and walked out of the station without a word. The city didn't care, it kept moving, lights flashing, horns blaring, but to her it felt like the world had gone silent. As she walked through the rain again, her mind replayed everything: Raffi's smirk, the black car, her father's file. They were all pieces of one big puzzle, and now they were trying to push her out of it. She didn't know where to go, so she went where she always went when she needed to think: the old riverside tea stall, the same one from that evening. The old man was there serving customers. When he saw her, he smiled softly. Ah, the brave police girl. She smiled faintly, not a police officer anymore apparently. He poured her tea without asking. You can take off a badge, but not what it stands for. She sat quietly, staring at the river. The water moved slowly, reflecting the dim city lights. The old man spoke again, his voice gentle. You know, when your father used to come here, he'd always say one thing: the truth hides best in plain sight. Her eyes widened slightly. You knew my father. The old man nodded. Inspector Does was a good man. He came here often during his last case, said he was close to something big, then he stopped coming. Rinny leaned forward. Did he ever tell you what he was investigating? The old man hesitated, glancing around. Then, in a whisper, he was looking into a ring of officers working with local gangs. He said they were trading police data, selling case information, witness names, everything. Rinny's heart pounded. Do you remember any name? He shook his head. Only a code name, Project Shadow. He said it involved someone high-ranking. Then one night a black car came here asking about him. After that he vanished. Rinny froze. A black car, just like the one that followed her. She looked at the old man. Do you remember the number plate? He smiled sadly. Child, I'm old, not blind. Same car that stopped near you that night. Number ends with 309. Rinny stood immediately, pulling out her phone to note it down. Thank you, uncle. Be careful, he said quietly. Your father tried to fight them, and they made sure no one ever found his body. Her throat tightened. They will pay. She walked away, determination solidifying inside her. She might not wear the uniform anymore, but she still had her training, her mind, and her will. That night, she tracked the number plate. It belonged to a private security vehicle registered under a company named NovaShield. The company didn't exist 5 years ago, but it appeared exactly 2 months after her father's death. Digging deeper, she found that NovaShield had contracts with police departments for information security and surveillance. Essentially, they monitored police data, the same thing her father was investigating. It wasn't just corruption, it was control. Before she could go further, her laptop screen glitched. Then a black window appeared. Stop digging, Rinny. Her hand froze on the mouse. Someone was inside her system. The message blinked again. You think you're chasing criminals, but you're chasing your own department. She yanked the plug out. The screen went dark. Her breathing quickened. This was beyond her reach now. Whoever was behind this had power, technology, and eyes everywhere. She didn't sleep that night. She went through old memories, photos of her father, his last messages, his diary. In one page, she found a note written in his familiar handwriting. "If I disappear, look for the man who never smiles." That was all, no name, no date, just those words. The next morning, she went to the only place left where she could get answers, the police archives. She used her old ID to slip in, pretending she was there to collect leftover files. She searched through the old logs of her father's team, and there it was, a photo from the annual department ceremony. Her father stood beside several officers. One of them, tall and serious, didn't smile, not even for the camera. Rinny zoomed in. Under the photo, the nameplate read, Deputy Commissioner Rahman. Her blood ran cold. Rahman, the same officer who had suspended her yesterday. Everything snapped into focus. Her father had been close to exposing him. Rahman had silenced him, and now he was trying to silence her too. But she wouldn't back down. That evening, she arranged to meet someone, a journalist her father once trusted. A man named Arif who worked for an independent news outlet. They met in a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Arif looked older now, with lines of exhaustion across his face. But when he saw Rinny, his eyes softened. "You look just like him," he said quietly. "Then help me finish what he started," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Rahman runs a network that leaks confidential information to criminal syndicates. They use it to manipulate arrests, erase evidence, and control investigations. Your father found proof, a hard drive, but before he could submit it, he was killed. The drive disappeared." "Where is it now?" Rinny asked. "No one knows," Arif said. "Some say Rahman kept it, others say your father hid it somewhere before he died." Rinny's mind raced. If he hid it, he'd hide it somewhere symbolic, somewhere safe. Arif thought for a moment. "He once mentioned you in an interview, said his daughter loved the park near your old house. He said, that place reminds me that truth needs patience, like trees growing in silence." Rinny stood abruptly. "The banyan tree." Arif looked up. "What?" "There's an old banyan tree near our old house. My father used to sit there every evening. I think he hid it there." Arif frowned. "Be careful, Rinny. If you're right, Rahman's men will be watching." But she was already gone. The night wind howled as she reached the park. The place was empty, shadows dancing under dim lampposts. The banyan tree stood tall, its roots thick and ancient. She knelt near the trunk, feeling along the base. Her fingers brushed something metal. She dug through the wet soil and pulled out a small, rusted box. Her heart pounded as she opened it. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a hard drive, old, scratched, but intact. Tears welled in her eyes. "You really did it, Baba." But before she could move, a beam of light hit her face. Headlights, the black car. She froze. A door opened and a familiar voice echoed through the dark. "I warned you, Sub-Inspector." Rahman stepped out, his coat glistening in the rain. "You should have stayed quiet." Rinny stood, clutching the box tightly. "You killed my father." He smiled faintly. "Your father was foolish. He thought justice was stronger than power." Her voice shook with anger. He believed truth could outlast corruption, and he was right. Rahman took a step forward. "Hand over the drive, Rinny. You don't know what you're dealing with." She backed away slowly. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with you." He sighed. "So be it." He gestured, and two men emerged from the shadows, guns raised. The rain poured harder, thunder rumbling overhead. Rinny knew she couldn't fight them head-on. She needed time. She needed a plan. She looked at the drive one last time, then, in a sudden motion, threw it deep into the bushes. Rahman's eyes widened. "What did you do?" Rinny smirked. "Let's see how well your power works without your evidence." He shouted, "Get her." She ran, through the mud, through the rain, her breath sharp and heavy. Bullets ripped through the air behind her, but she didn't stop. She dove behind an old concrete bench, panting. Rahman's voice echoed through the dark. "You can run, but you can't hide. We own this city." Rinny's whisper cut through the rain. "Not anymore." She grabbed a loose pipe from the ground and waited as footsteps approached. Her eyes were sharp, her pulse steady. The moment one of Rahman's men appeared, she swung hard. The man dropped instantly. But when she turned, Rahman was standing behind her, gun aimed at her chest. He smiled coldly. "Game over." The thunder cracked, rain streamed down her face, her hand tightened around the broken pipe. He whispered, "Any last words?" She looked him dead in the eyes. "Yeah, my father's daughter doesn't die that easily." And before he could react, a shot rang out, not from his gun but from somewhere behind him. Rahman froze, then his gun slipped from his hand as he fell to his knees. Behind him stood Arif holding a pistol. Rini stared shocked. "Arif." He lowered the weapon. "You weren't supposed to face this alone." Rahman groaned, clutching his arm. You don't know what you've done." Rini stepped forward slowly. "I know exactly what I've done." She looked around, the bushes, the shadows, the chaos, but the hard drive was gone. Someone had taken it. She turned to Arif. "The drive." He shook his head. "It's gone." She looked back at Rahman, who was smiling despite the pain. "You'll never find it," he hissed, "because it's already been activated." Rini frowned. "Activated?" His laugh was weak but chilling. "Every secret in that drive, every name will destroy more than you can imagine." Before she could ask more, Rahman collapsed unconscious. Arif looked at her grimly. "We need to leave now." As they disappeared into the rain-soaked night, the black car's headlights turned off one by one. The city returned to silence. But far away, inside a dark server room, a series of encrypted files began to upload automatically, labeled Project Shadow. Rini didn't know it yet, but what she had uncovered wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something that could tear the entire police department apart. The silence that followed after Annika's revelation wasn't peace, it was a storm hiding behind calm air. Her eyes didn't carry anger anymore. They carried a warning. The same boys who laughed minutes ago were now staring at her badge, realizing the woman they mocked was no longer the simple girl from the street, she was the law herself. Rafi's throat went dry. He tried to smile as if this was some misunderstanding. "Appa, we were just joking, it's a misunderstanding, please." But Annika didn't blink. "A misunderstanding?" Her voice was quiet, but it cut sharper than a shout. "When you followed me for 3 days, when you threw comments, when you blocked my way, was that also a misunderstanding?" No one spoke. The boys looked around, hoping for some miracle to save them. People had gathered, phones out, recording. The same crowd that once ignored her humiliation was now capturing their shame. Annika took one step closer. "You thought you could say anything to any woman walking alone, but today you will learn what it feels like when the law walks among you." She pulled out her walkie-talkie. "Alpha 3, this is Officer Annika. I need backup at Road 14 near the old bakery. 3 suspects, attempted harassment, verbal assault, possible past offenses." The boys froze. The name officer hit them like lightning. Rafi whispered, "She's calling the police." Another boy muttered, "We're finished, bro." Within minutes, 2 police vans arrived. Uniformed officers surrounded the group. The same street where they laughed moments ago now echoed with the sound of boots, commands, and cuffs clicking shut. But Annika didn't look satisfied, her eyes didn't soften, she stared at them one by one. "You know what hurts the most," she said quietly. "It's not your words, it's the silence of everyone who heard them." She turned toward the crowd. "You all watched, didn't you? You saw them tease me and no one said a word. That's why these boys think they can do anything, because you let them." No one dared meet her eyes. A woman in the crowd lowered her phone and whispered, "She's right." That moment, that heavy silence, was louder than sirens. As the boys were taken away, one of them, the youngest, maybe 17, started crying. "Appa, I'm sorry, please don't destroy my life." For the first time, Annika looked uncertain, her eyes softened just a little. "You should have thought about life before you destroyed someone else's peace," she said. He dropped his head, tears falling. The vans drove off. The street grew quiet again, but something inside Annika didn't rest. She didn't feel victorious. She felt heavy. The image of that boy crying haunted her mind. She knew what the system could do. Once you entered it, you didn't come out the same. That night, back in her apartment, Annika sat in silence. The city lights spilled through her window, reflecting off her badge. She held it in her hand, staring. That small piece of metal had power to punish, to protect, and sometimes to destroy. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her superior, Inspector Rahman. "Good job, Officer Annika. The video went viral. You made the department proud." She read it twice. Viral. the word felt strange, was that what justice had become, a video for views. She switched off the screen. Outside, she could hear faint sounds, laughter from a distant tea stall. Life went on as if nothing happened. But inside her something stirred, a thought, a question. Did I really make a difference, or just another headline? The next morning, she woke to chaos. News channels replayed her clip again and again. Brave undercover cop teaches harassers a lesson. Headlines screamed praise. Social media flooded with hashtags. But as fame grew, something else surfaced. A video leaked, a short clip showing her shoving Raffi before arrest. Online comments turned divided. Some called her a hero, others called her abusive power. Annika ignored it for a while, until she received a call. "Officer Annika, come to the station. The boys' families filed a complaint. They're claiming you assaulted them without warning." Her heart dropped. Within an hour, she was standing in front of a review panel. Her own department now questioned her. The same superior who praised her yesterday looked cold today. "Officer Annika, we've received a formal complaint. The footage shows you using unnecessary force. What do you have to say?" She stood tall. "Sir, they followed and harassed me. I identified myself after repeated provocation. I did what the law allows." The superior leaned back. "Public opinion is turning. We need to handle this carefully." "Public opinion," she asked quietly, "or political pressure?" He didn't answer, just sighed. "You'll be temporarily suspended until the investigation is over." The room spun. Her badge, her pride, was taken from her hand. She walked out of the building feeling like the world had flipped upside down. That night she sat by the window again in plain clothes. For the first time in years she felt ordinary, powerless. But her phone rang again, an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Madam," a trembling voice said, "this is Raffi." She froze. "What do you want?" I wanted to say sorry again. You don't know everything. We weren't just teasing. Someone sent us." Her heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean someone sent you?" "There's a man. His name is Kabir. He told us to bother you, said you were poking around things you shouldn't. We didn't know you were police. Please believe me." Her blood ran cold. Kabir, the name wasn't unfamiliar. A local businessman with rumored criminal ties, someone she had quietly been investigating off-duty. "Where is he now?" she asked. "I don't know, but please, madam, don't let them put me in jail. I'll tell you everything if you promise to protect me." The line went dead. Annika stared at her phone. Suddenly, everything made sense. The harassment, the setup, the video leak, it wasn't random. It was a trap. Someone wanted her image destroyed before she could expose them. She grabbed her jacket, tucked her service revolver inside, and stepped into the night. Suspended or not, she was still a cop, at least in spirit. Hours later, she found herself outside a warehouse near the river, the place Kabir was rumored to use for illegal trade. The air was thick with diesel and danger. She slipped inside quietly. The darkness swallowed her. Voices echoed from the far end. Kabir was there, tall, well-dressed, surrounded by men. He was laughing over a phone call. "See, one viral video and that girl's career is finished. Next time she'll think twice before sniffing around my business." Annika stepped forward. "Funny, I didn't think you'd celebrate this early." The men turned. Kabir froze. "You?" "Surprised," she said calmly. "You like setting traps. Let's see how it feels when the trap turns." He smirked. "You're suspended. You have no authority." "Authority?" She raised her phone. "This entire conversation is being recorded, and this time you'll be the one trending." Kabir lunged forward, but before he could reach her, flashing lights filled the warehouse. Her backup, the same team who once questioned her, had followed her tracker. Kabir's men scattered, but it was too late. Within minutes, the operation was over. As officers dragged Kabir out, he glared at her. "You'll pay for this, Annika." She didn't reply, just turned away, tired but steady. Later that night, she stood on the same street where everything began, the corner where the boys had teased her. It was quiet now. The city slept peacefully. She looked at her reflection in a shop window, the same girl, same face but different eyes. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Inspector Rahman. "Case closed, suspension lifted. Proud of you, officer." She smiled faintly, not because she was proud but because finally justice felt real again. As she walked away under the streetlights, her voice echoed softly in her mind, a whisper only she could hear. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a uniform, sometimes it just walks quietly through the same streets where others look away. The screen fades on her silhouette walking into the night, her steps calm, her badge shining once again not as a symbol of power but as proof of courage. Because the world may forget the girl they teased, but they will never forget the officer she became.